Hey guys, I know it's been a while, but much like everyone else, this past year really had me by the, Anywho, since I was gone so long, I thought I better ask what kind of video you wanted to see. And though it was pretty close, the majority wanted urban legends, so I shall deliver. The last one I did on Michigan, everyone seemed to really like, but many people chimed in on the urban legends left off the list, so I thought Michigan deserved a part 2. I mean, I know everyone talks about how odd Florida is, but it gets weird here too. Most of the time, it's just the weather. Unless, however, you found yourself in a rural location because you decided camping was a great idea. The rustling of the leaves and a few branches snap, and now you're sitting up in your tent, breathing heavily, and hoping that those sounds you're hearing aren't attached to any kind of predator. And after this video, you'll pray that those aren't the sounds of anything on the list. Enjoy. Blood Cemetery, Lanesburg. What's creepier than a cemetery named after blood? This cemetery has several urban legends, but almost all of them feature a recurring theme: Dr. Blood. The wealthy Blood family lived in the area in the 1800s. They even built their own cemetery on the land. The last surviving member of the family was Dr. Blood. He lived in a creepy old mansion next to the cemetery, which became known as Blood House. The legend claims that the doctor shot his wife with a shotgun, then hacked her body to bits with an axe. Then he hung himself from a tree in the cemetery. And now the ghost of Dr. and Mrs. Blood haunt it. Another version of the urban legend claims that the ghost of Dr. Blood will try to murder anyone who visits the cemetery on Halloween night. One detailed version of the urban legend features a more modern version of Dr. Blood and the demise of his wife. One Halloween night, a bunch of teens visited the cemetery. They spotted a ghostly figure moving among the gravestones. This spooked them so much, they decided to make a quick exit. But as they were leaving, one boy decided to dare another to go into the old Blood mansion. Of course he took the dare. After an hour, the boy had not come out. His friends were terrified to go in, so instead, they drove to the nearest police station. The sheriff on duty said, "Don't you know Dr. Blood still lives there? And he doesn't like anyone trespassing on his property." When they arrived back at the old mansion, it was ablaze. The police called the fire department, who tried to put out the flames, but the house burned to the ground. After the fire was put out, they sifted through the rubble and found the charred remains of the missing teen boy. His hands and feet were bound, and a shotgun and bloody axe were found beside him. A freshly dug grave was found in the cemetery. They dug it up and found the headless body of a woman in a red gown. It was Mrs. Blood. Many have claimed to see a headless, armless woman in a white gown wandering the cemetery late at night. Others claim to see Dr. Blood patrolling the land to keep trespassers away. Orbs and cold spots have been experienced by ghost hunters, along with a weird feeling emanating off a big old tree. There are several stories about teens who visit the cemetery and regret it. Many have claimed to see Dr. Blood with an axe in one hand and a shotgun in the other. One teen couple crashed their motorcycle after visiting the cemetery. In 1989, 2 teen girls wanted to check out the legend, but the car spun out of control and crashed into Round Lake, where they drowned, trapped in the car. The Landmark Inn Marquette. In Marquette, there's a hotel that has one particular room that has unnerved guest after guest. The Landmark Inn opened in 1930 as the Northland Inn and was the area's most popular social place to stay, especially for visiting celebrities, including the Rolling Stones, who didn't stay the night but met at the hotel bar to honor their late road manager. Under the name Northland Inn, it fell into disrepair and closed down in 1982. It reopened in the mid-90s as the Landmark Inn and regained its former glory as the town's shining star. But something dark seemed to occupy a corner in the room on the 6th floor. They call it the Lilac Room, where several guests have witnessed paranormal occurrences and a spectral figure. One of the stories attached to the room is that of a young woman whose lover was a sailor who set out on Lake Superior and was never seen again. Did he jilt her, or did his ship go down? The questions about his disappearance plagued her to a point where she couldn't take the grief anymore. She was found in her room after hanging herself out of despair. Evidently not accepting her lover's fate, or even her own, she remained in the room as if waiting for her sailor to return. Guests who stay in that corner room have seen her ghost standing at the window, lying on the bed, standing at the foot of the bed, and gliding through the room. All witnesses report the same thing. They have all said the female spirit wears a floral gown, and therefore has been named the Lilac Lady. Another legend is that while the Landmark Inn was being built, a man murdered his girlfriend in a jealous rage after she told him about her past boyfriends and suitors. Since the inn was still under construction, he dragged her body to the unfinished basement and buried her there. When workmen returned to finish the construction, they wound up reporting the sounds they heard coming from the basement, weeping and a whispering female voice that sounded like she was trying to get the workmen to find her body. Little Mary's grave, Jackson. Mary McNaughton was 7 years old when she perished. She was born in 1884. She was the granddaughter of Moses Archibald McNaughton. He was a doctor, mayor, real estate developer, and railroad entrepreneur at different stages of his life. Mary, her mother Elizabeth, and sisters fled to Jackson in 1892 during a typhoid and diphtheria outbreak that was quickly infecting the city's inhabitants. They went to Brighton, and it was there that Mary suffered from an infection, and on July 18th, her appendix ruptured. Elizabeth was inconsolable in the hours passing after her daughter's peril condition turned for the worst. The women packed up and returned to Jackson to bury poor Mary in the family plot. The journey back was difficult for her sisters as well. As the family gathered around her freshly dug grave, they said their prayers and goodbyes with heavy hearts. That very night, Elizabeth's screams woke her from a nightmare. She said she was certain there had been a mistake and that Mary had been buried alive. Her desperation and unrest persuaded her husband to order Mary's grave to be exhumed in order to calm her and give her reassurance that this was not true. But as the lid was removed, to their horror, there before them were deep and desperate scratch marks gouged into the lid of the coffin. Mary lay there in true rigor mortis with her face twisted in agony and little hands bloodied and worn, proving that their mother's worst fears were real. Little Mary had indeed been mistakenly buried alive despite her feeble attempts to escape her fate. She suffocated in the casket shortly after being put into the earth. Legend has it that while walking in the woods near the family plot, you can still hear Mary crying and hear the sounds of wood being scratched. She's even been seen hovering over her gravesite in solitary ghostly despair. Mary was not the only one in history to fall victim to being buried alive. There are many accounts dating back to the 1300s of those that shared a similar fate. A few years after Mary's ultimate demise, an invention was created in 1896 that would save lives. Centuries of suffocatingly horrific, premature burials happened over time, but one man in Russia, Count Karnis Karnicki, imagined the nightmare one faces when being buried underground and came up with a contraption. The instrument contained a spring-loaded tube that passes vertically from the lid of the coffin to the top of an airtight box that lies above ground level. The tube lies on the deceased person's chest, connected to a mechanism inside of the box that will move in a way that causes the lid of the box to fly open at the slightest movement to release a flag as well as a loud bell to get the attention of someone nearby. Primitive medicine would often mistake comas for death, but the most common was catalepsy. Characteristics include immobility of muscles, and the victims could appear in strange and odd positions after experiencing hysteria, which was a side effect of schizophrenia, which there were no drug treatments for during Victorian times. The fear of being buried alive became very real for people. Bigfoot. There are 107 documented cases of Bigfoot sightings in the state of Michigan. The most recent case I found came from an article dated October 31st of 2020, which we all know was a nightmare in and of itself. It's not the height that freaks you out, it's the mass. For most people that believe they've seen Bigfoot, the sighting can become a source of fear. Don Peer is an Upper Peninsula-based investigator with the Bigfoot Field Researchers Organization. He's looked into several reports of Bigfoot sightings, as well as participating in Bigfoot expeditions. One story has stuck with him. It was the first time someone broke down sobbing on the phone with him. He said, "I don't think I can ever hunt again. I can't even bring myself to go out and look." Peer recalled of the conversation with the hunter. And all he did was stumble upon one that was laying on the ground, basically sleeping. The creature jumped up and ran away. You're talking about 800 to 1,000 pounds for an adult male. Just that size is what freaks people out. Kim Fleming, a former Bigfoot investigator, says she's had several sightings. She agrees that people get spooked by the sheer size of what they're seeing, because it's happened to her. She was investigating a Bigfoot report near Kalkaska when something crossed behind her car. It was absolutely enormous. It took up 2/3 of my rearview mirror. All I could think of was hit the gas, and so she did, and later began having panic attacks. There's a sense of fear that comes over you. She compared it to the adrenaline rush you might experience when avoiding a car crash. That situation made me realize I probably wasn't doing the wisest thing, and it just scared me, and I decided that I was done. Belson Mansion and Crypt, Niles. Otherwise known as the Lone Crypt of Niles. There sits an old mansion that was built in 1847, and, thanks to all who occupied the house over the years, it looks almost as gorgeous as the day it was built. It was constructed by a local whiskey distiller who sold it to attorney Strother Beeson. To this day, it is referred to as the Belson Mansion. Across the street is the family's private cemetery, with the old family crypt dead center. No other graves that we know of are here, just a stone-fenced area of land dotted with trees that surround this lone crypt. Strother built the tomb across the street as a final resting place for his mother, complete with exquisite marble in an area that was well kept, almost like a small park, with flower urns and fine groundskeeping. It wasn't too long afterward, another family member joined his mother in the crypt. Strother's son and daughter-in-law, William and Harriet, had a son, Job Wuthrow Beeson, born in 1869. 1 year later, the baby died, and he was placed inside the crypt alongside his grandmother. Harriet Beeson was so overcome with grief that her mental state took a nosedive. Every night she would go into the crypt and treat the deceased infant as if he were still alive. She would put clean diapers on him every night, give him baths, rock him, and somehow even feed him. She believed he was afraid of the dark, so she would leave a lit lantern in the crypt to keep him from being scared. There wasn't much Strother could do about this, and he didn't try to dissuade her from her nightly rituals. In fact, he installed a carbide gas plant connected to a pipeline that ran into the crypt to keep the lantern flame continuously burning. Harriet kept this behavior up until the inevitable happened. One night, after feeding and bathing the lifeless baby, she proceeded to rock him. But by this time, the body had started to decompose so much that as she rocked him, the eyes fell out of its head, much to Harriet's shock and horror. Her severe state of shock led her to be put in an insane asylum, where she eventually died at the age of 28. She too is buried within the crypt, making a total of 12 relatives buried within the walls of the tomb. The entire area, the mansion and private cemetery across the street, are said to be haunted. Female sobbing has been heard, believed to be the heart-wrenching wails of Harriet, grieving for her lost baby. Some think the ghost of the infant himself haunts the grounds. The Cornfield Monster of Wynn. Evidently, some local townsfolk believe their community of Wynn has a monster in its midst. Reminiscent of a Bigfoot, it's described as a large, dark, slovenly creature on 2 legs and resides in the nearby cornfields. This creature has been reported as emerging from the cornstalks and scaring people who drive down the lonely dirt stretch of Coe Road in Isabella County. According to a Schwann's truck driver, he would occasionally drive down that road late at night, much to the horror of locals, who warned him there was a monster who lived amongst the corn down that road. The driver admitted he occasionally felt that something tried to reach out of the corn at his truck when he would drive down the road late at night. However, the most startling incident happened in 2003 at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. He pulled his truck over and stopped along the road to eat his lunch. And when he finished eating, he got out of the truck to stretch his legs. This is when the beast appeared out of the corn and stood just 5 feet away. He said the creature was unexplainable, dark, dirty, man-like. He screamed, scrambled back into his truck, and drove off, passing by the thing as it stared at him until he was out of sight. The Curse of the Detroit Lions. This one is dedicated to my husband, who is a firm believer of the curse. Now, I know this isn't an urban legend, but a curse can bring about urban legends. So maybe someday there will be a creature deemed the swamp monster of the Detroit Lions or something, but for now, it's just a curse. Also known as the Curse of Bobby Lane. Legend has it that in 1958, after leading the Lions to 3 NFL championships and providing Detroit nearly a decade of Hall of Fame play, the Lions traded Bobby Lane. Bobby was injured during the last championship season, and the Lions thought he was through and wanted to get what they could from him. According to legend, as he was leaving for Pittsburgh, Bobby said that Detroit would not win for 50 years. Many believe there is sufficient evidence that supports and confirms the existence of this curse, which has been plaguing this team for nearly half a century. For 50 years, the Lions have searched for answers, and each time they think they have one, it gets foiled, and they have to start all over again. The team is constantly in a rebuilding state with an ever-constant quarterback controversy. The coaching situation is in a constant state of turmoil as well, with coaches being either too easy on the players or too harsh. There have been many non-supernatural explanations for the Lions over the past few decades, including the most popular, perhaps, is the ownership problem. The fact is the curse began before the Fords owned the team, and 1 year after Bill Ford was voted president. The Ford Rotunda, the 5th most popular tourist spot in the United States at the time, burned down and was never seen again. Like many of its coaches. Sell the team. The curse has seemingly turned them into a laughing stock in the league and a thorn in the side of its many dedicated fans who frustratingly watch as their beloved team tanks time and time again. You'd think after all this, they'd really discount some of their merch. Between ghosts, bad roads, water, and weather that will give you whiplash from morning till night, make sure you grab a Kogel and a Werner since you're already here. Pure Michigan. If you like the video, please hit that like button and subscribe so you can see more from me. And if you have any requests, please leave them in the comment section. See you next time.